Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with the Ikoira Lair of Behemoths Part 2 for the top performing cards from week 1. If you haven't looked at the Part 1, go and check out my main channel, the Rogue Deck Builder, and that will catch you up on where we're at with this video. So for this particular video, we are going to pick a card from each one of these archetypes that I think is lagging behind. And as soon as these paper cards are available, keep in mind this is not available until May 15th, and there will be some lag. That gives us the opportunity to actually invest in these cards before inevitably these decks will be made in paper. So currently they are being played like crazy on Arena and on MTGO. And like I said, there's going to be that lag, which is a unique thing that's never really happened before in Magic the Gathering, to allow us to actually see the results before the supply is actually there. So a bunch of these cards have already spiked up because you can't actually get them, but the cards you can get that go with them have surprisingly not really moved. So that's going to give you a bit of an opportunity to get ahead of the curve before people actually pick these up to include them in the decks when they actually do play at their, well, assuming that local game stores and GPs and stuff will be open back up. We don't know. That's the big question, is if this will translate into paper. But assuming that it does, and assuming that we get a handle on this pandemic, then I think that these will lag behind, and eventually these cards will start to be increased as people buy these copies to play in the paper Magic. So let's just jump in it and let's take a look at the honorable mention, which is the Ozolith. The Ozolith saw a lot of play in Robots, in Modern and in Pioneer. And here's a sample deck of the Robots from Modern. This one is utilizing just a 2 of the Ozolith, but it is running Hangerback Walker, which doesn't see the most play in a lot of the Modern Robots. Sometimes they don't go for this particular card, but I think Hangerback Walker is the perfect card for the Ozolith because you do want Hangerback Walker to die to get those tokens out, and then you still get the 1/1 counters, then go on the Ozolith, and then can be transferred onto something like the Arcbound Ravager. It also gives a unique little way to be able to put this on a... Actually, this is a Pioneer. No, it's Modern. It says Modern. But, yep, there we go. Yeah, it has the ability to then sacrifice the Ozolith to the Arcbound Ravager, or sacrifice everything Arcbound Ravager, put it on the Ozolith, and then move the Ozolith counters over to Inkmoth Nexus, which is another evasive way that you can get in for lethal with this deck. So if I were to pick a card to go up, I think the one that the price point that I like the most is actually Hangerback Walker. The main reason I'm going to choose Hangerback Walker is the lowest it's been since the Pioneer was announced, and it is starting to see that little curve of trending back up. And this is a double dipper. So if I were to pick a card from Modern, like Inkmoth Nexus, for example, I don't like really the price point for it, or Hardened Scales, maybe we could go with the Hardened Scales route, but I think the Hangerback Walker is the right card, because it does have the most synergy with the Ozolith, and I think that all the decks that do contain it are going to be wanting to go that route. So Pioneer mainly is the reasoning for Hangerback Walker. I think it's a good time to get in on the card. Of course, you really want to go cheap here. You look at the market price around $5.50. That is incredibly low. I think even going for like the Card Kingdom, if you have store credit to move, is pretty decent for Hangerback Walker. This spiked all the way up to $17. It's pretty high, and that's because I think there were some lackluster finishes for this particular card. There were some decks that chose not to include it, like even looked over at like the there were some Ensoul Artifact decks that chose not even to run it, and that there just wasn't enough reason to be running Hangerback Walker, and I think the Ozolith actually does give us that reason to start including Hangerback Walker in these Robot and Ensoul Artifact type shells. All right, so moving on to the next one, this is Slither Wisp. Slither Wisp didn't have the greatest finish over the weekend, but I think that it's the real deal, especially the meta changes back over to mono red, because the black-blue flash deck does very well against that particular deck, as now we have not only a lot more of the flash components to actually make cards like Slither Wisp work, but there is still Aether Gust in the format that is one of the best premier removal spells against the mono red deck, and we have Heartless Act, which is super good against the mono red deck. I think that's what we're missing, is like an instant speed removal spell to actually interact with mono red. I think the more people will actually go over to this particular deck. It does pretty decent versus Jeskai Fires too, which is on the rise. Any of the flash decks that have access to counter spells end up being pretty decent against it. Yes, Teferi does sort of shut down that angle for the flash decks, but there are answers against Teferi with Noxious Grasp that can go in the sideboard and work pretty well with these flash-based strategies to take care of Teferi. Slither Wisp here's an example deck of the Slither Wisp, is not really running a lot of cards that are investable, but I would like to choose one particular card that I think is going to be at its low because of Challenger decks, which is Brazen Borrower. I think that it's not too terrible to get into Brazen Borrower. If we looked at most of the Challenger decks that got reprints in the past, this should continue on for a few more months, but if you can get in for the super low price for people just unloading those Challenger decks, I would try to target these in the sub $12, $10 range, and there should be plenty of product. I think this is going to have a good bounce back, pun intended, for the Brazen Borrower, because of just how much it sees play in multiple formats, and this is just another reason in Standard it's going to survive rotation. I think that Mono Blue Flash is here to stay as well. Blue Green Flash is still good. Blue Red Flash looks good post-rotation with Brazen Borrower and the Octopus, and plenty of cards that work with, synergize with those, with the Sprite Dragon. All of those are really good reasons to continue to look at Brazen Borrower as a potential investment. All right, on to the next one is the Shark Typhoon. So Shark Typhoon is a very versatile card because you can cycle it for 2 or cycle it for 3 and get a 1/1 and draw a card, or cycle it for 4 and get a 2/2 and draw a card. It scales pretty well with how much mana you have. It's a threat on that access. And then if you do end up hardcasting Shark Typhoon, you're going to be creating a lot of flying sharks. So the deck that is seeing the most play in right now is Azorius Control. And again, Azorius Control doesn't have too many things that are that interesting for investments. I have chosen Elspeth Conquers Death. I think this is a pretty good card to start picking up, especially if you get in on the low price of trying to, like, Card Kingdom $1.29. That seems pretty good. I think Theros Beyond Death is done being opened once this Ikoria comes out, and all the hype will be away from Theros Beyond Death. We still have Euros that people are going to fish for that's going to keep the price down for Elspeth, but Elspeth Conquers Death sees a lot of play in various decks in Standard. There's still like black-white enchantment-based or flicker-based decks with the White Cavalier that will run Elspeth Conquers Death. There's still the Dance of Mance decks that you'll see occasionally. Of course, Blue-White Control is very big. Elspeth Conquers Death is also used in Fires of Invention. And so I think all those lead up to this card being a very good pickup right now, with Theros Beyond Death going to be out of its draft season. Less quantities are going to enter the market, and this will start to tick up. All right, so on to the next one, which is Riel, the Everwise. Riel, the Everwise, is going in the Arclight Phoenix decks, and here's an example deck list of the Riel with 4 Arclight Phoenix. So, of course, everything in this deck is basically commons and uncommons. It's going to be a decently budget deck to get in on, just Steam Vents, and I guess, well, Riel is pretty expensive at the moment. But Arclight Phoenix is positioned again to look like it is a decent pickup for the card with Arclight Phoenix. Why is Arclight Phoenix hitting Arclight Phoenix? Arclight Phoenix, if you divide that before, though, so what we're looking at like a little over $6 a card. So if you can get it on lower, that's a very cheap price for Arclight Phoenix. It was included in a Challenger deck, but what only is a 1 of in that Challenger deck, and that was of the last year. And occasionally, like, Arclight Phoenix has been struggling in Modern and Pioneer, but it's only a few cards away from this, from actually seeing play in those various formats again. And so I think Arclight Phoenix is, well, I don't know, with Luris in the mix, it makes Arclight Phoenix a little bit of a liability, but if you still see this deck continue to post up numbers, this is probably the only card that I would really think about investing in. And still, that's pretty cheap, though, for a Mythic that has dominated formats in the past. All right, next up we have Winota, Joiner of Forces. So, hasn't really put up the numbers, but it's a very, very popular casual deck, and you should never write off casual favorites. So, the combo with Winota is going to be the Agents of Treachery. This is kind of a sample deck list that is done well. This one actually doesn't run Raise the Alarms. The ones that have been running out right now, like Raise the Alarms, is pretty good. You have even lands like Dwarven Mines that you can run to just get that token in that is a non-human token, and then you attack in, and it triggers no matter how many tokens or non-human creatures you attack with. It's going to trigger that many times. So Winota, Joiner of Forces, especially Raise the Alarms, is going to give you a high potential of hitting Agent of Treachery. So if Winota sticks till combat and you get to attack in with a non-human creature, you have a pretty good probability of getting out the Agent of Treachery. Right now, there isn't the greatest amount of humans. I think that people, when they start messing around with the best humans to cheat out, we might see some other iterations of cards. This particular one is also running Luca, Coppercoat Outcast to cheat in the Agent of Treachery, so you can exile a creature like the Winota just to go get an Agent of Treachery if, for whatever reason, that it failed, or I guess in this case, they're probably going to go with the Elite Guard Mage after it actually gives you some value, and then just go get Luca, and you exile cards from the top of your library until you, of course, have to hit the Agent of Treachery with how that works. But for this particular deck, I think the obvious choice is going to be the Agent of Treachery. The card's already spiking up in value. The reason why I like this card long-term is it sees a lot of play in casual, so many Commander players run this in their blue decks. It's easy to ramp into. You get to take control of your opponent's permanent. It's easy to flicker and be extremely degenerate with this card, and I think that's exactly what Commander players like. So long-term investment, this one's smart. I doubt we'll ever see this card go down even after rotation, as the supply will just continue to be eaten up from those Commander players. So pretty smart to get an Agent of Treachery because of Winota. All right, on to the next one, which is Sea Dasher Octopus. Sea Dasher Octopus is seeing a lot of play in various decks. I've even seen it in mono blue sideboard or blue-white control sideboards, just as a way to, if you don't have any creature removal, this is a great card to flash in and be just a stealer sequence with flash, and then it can just continue to get you card advantage and help you keep drawing absorbs and other removal spells. And then in mono blue flash is exactly what the deck was missing. When Curious Obsession rotated out, they needed some card advantage, and it did actually go 7-0, won the challenge, or at least did the best in the standard challenge with this list. And again, there's not a lot of cards that are investable in this particular list. Maybe the Stonecoil Serpent, but I don't know if that is really position itself in this particular deck. It is a great target to put a Sea Dasher onto because of the X spells, but again, I would choose Brazen Borrower as the investable target because another deck that is running Brazen Borrower. It's one of the most powerful cards ever printed. It's definitely on the power level of most Legacy and Modern cards, and that's why it sees play in those formats. And again, with a deck that is running a 4 of Brazen Borrowers, it's going to quickly eat up that supply from the Challenger decks that got introduced. So yeah, this looks like the real deal, the Sea Dasher Octopus. Both of those I wouldn't fault you for going to Brazen Borrowers or Stonecoil Serpents. These other cards are highly accessible because the Challenger decks actually do offer like the Disputes, the Mystical Disputes, the Aether Gust, even the Drakes are in those Challenger decks. So this, for another reason too, is people might want to be upgrading their Challenger decks just into mono blue, so they can trade off all the green stuff out of their deck and try to pick up the pieces. They'll need Brazen Borrowers for this list. Alrighty, so we go on to the next one, with this Obosh, the Prey Piercer. So Obosh the Prey Piercer is mainly seen play in Pioneer in the kind of the elf ramp into the going into 1/3. So Elvish Mystic into something like even like a Bone Crusher Giant or a Lovestruck Beast is not that bad. I've even seen some other iterations of this with the Legion Loyalists and the Goblin Rabblemaster. All those are pretty good too, but it does look like the Steel Leaf Champion is a pretty good target to invest in at the moment. It has been trending up anyways from Pioneer in various Stompy-based decks. It's gone back down a little bit, so I think it's another good time to get in on people that have just sold off a lot of cards because of the pandemic going on. And it's a good time to, if you think that Paper Magic is ever going to recover, I think this is a great target just because of the casual favorite. It synergizes pretty good with the Obosh because you do want some evasive damage when then you do cast Obosh, and then it comes in and your Steel Leaf Champion will do 10 damage if it goes through. I think that's pretty decent. It's the only 4 of in this deck that is investable because Lovestruck Beast and the Bone Crusher Giant were basically reprinted in the Challenger decks. Maybe you could make the argument for Gruul Spellbreaker, but I think the Steel Leaf Champion is the older card. It's the card that has a lot more versatility than the Spellbreaker. And if you don't think that this is the version that people are going to go, maybe they're going to go the Legion the Goblin Rabblemaster version. Possibly those cards might be pretty decent investments as well. But for this particular, there are some standard decks running it too. But yeah, I think the Steel of Champions is a pretty good investment. All right, then we go on to the Sprite Dragon. Sprite Dragon is seeing a lot of play in various decks, and I only think it's a matter of time before the other formats actually pick up this neat little combo. So the Dreadhorde Arcanist and Sprite Dragon seem to be like a match made in heaven. So you're going to be able to cast the card. So when Dreadhorde Arcanist attacks, you may cast an instant Surge card, convert mana cost lessens power, and then use it again. So I think that's where Sprite Dragons with these tempo-based shells are going to want to go. The Dreadhorde Arcanist is going to fill up, or you're going to cast like Ops and I want to say Wild Slash, but Shocks, those type of cards. Dreadhorde Arcanist is then going to be able to get them back again, and you're going to get that residual plus on the Sprite Dragon. There are cards even like on Summon that seem pretty good. If there's ways to get counters on the Dreadhorde Arcanist, that's also pretty good to then be able to recast them. We're looking at some of the cards like Team or Battle Rage and other formats. I think we'll get neat with this little 1-2 punch. So I'm liking the Dreadhorde Arcanist just as a good little investment because it's pretty low at the point. I mean, it got incredibly high here, up to $10. War of the Spark was just printed like crazy, went way back down, but it does seem like it's hit its bottom, is going to start curving back up. And again, like I said, I think that this is a combo that is here to stay. These two, the Sprite Dragon, Dreadhorde Arcanist. And so it's very powerful in multiple formats that you play it in. All right, then we go on to Gyruda, Doom of the Depths. It's probably going to get banned in Legacy just how degenerate it is with the Lion's Eye Diamond. However, it is seeing play in Standard, and here is a version of the deck that did go 3-2. It does beat up on other mid-range decks. It can do some pretty crazy stuff. I think it's going to be a casual favorite for the Johnny combo player. And the Dream Eater is a very lucrative, or this was an interesting little spec. The problem with Dream Eater is it doesn't go in every one of these versions. There are other versions that go like the Luminous Archon and the like Dream Trawlers, the thing you can cheat out and then just have just like a threat that's hard to deal with. Or you can go into the Charming Prince that then will cycle the Gyruda. This particular one just says, okay, hitting a Dream Eater is probably good enough. If you go Gyruda and a Dream Eater, you have 10 power on board. You've just bounced your opponent's threat, and then they have to kind of then deal with you. And that this is going. I've seen some other iterations like then running like Polukranos in the mix too, because Polukranos is an even mana cost card that then you can cast from the graveyard. And I think that some of the decks might start to go more over into this route because the consistency. It doesn't just flat out win the deck like the Charming Prince version does, but I think that this one is the more consistent of getting as much power out as soon as possible, and then just kind of reminds me of like a Storm sideboard plan where they take out the can't even think of the card now. The one that storms and does 1 damage. Whatever. Anyway, they bring in the one that spawns a bunch of goblin tokens, and then you just try to cast like 4 cards and then cast it and then create enough 8 goblin tokens. Say, okay, you have a few turns to deal with that many goblins that are attacking you, and can you? And I feel that this is the same sort of strategy with this deck. Okay, I get Gyruda down. Hopefully it hits 1 or 2 other things. I got 12 power on board. Can you actually deal with that in a few turns? And many decks actually can't do that. So it's a good little meta choice for when there's more of these mid-range grindy type strategies. And it can actually do some still pretty degenerate stuff by hitting multiple copies of Spark Doubles and putting out a ton of power. But it doesn't just win the game combo like some of these other ones do. There are some iterations in Modern and of course Legacy doing some crazy stuff. However, for Standard, I think Dream Eater is the one that makes the most sense. Spark Double's already gone back up, but Dream Eater's nice because it's a mythic. So it's already spiking up a little bit here. But the Dream Eater Mythic, Guilds of Ravnica, $1. Yeah, that's pretty much scraping the barrel at that point. And these type of mythics usually, if it does see a play as a 4 of, even in 50% of the decks, it probably is you're looking at something that's going to be $4 or $5 and a quick $2.50 buy list when the stores run out of these Dream Eaters. All right, on to the next one, which is Gnar Set of the Ancient Way. This has spawned a few different archetypes, but the one that it's seeing the most play in is Jeskai Fires, because it's really what everything Jeskai Fires wants to do. You play the Jeskai Fires, it's your premier 2-drop to then throw out, draw a card, discard something you don't need, like an extra Kenrith or an extra any card at that point that you have multiples of, kill the threat that your opponent has out, and then the next turn you can do it again just to set up to try to find another card, try to find that Cavalier of Flame to then hopefully get in for lethal at that point. So Narset, pretty strong card in these Fire of Invention decks, Fires of Invention to get it reprinted in the Challenger decks. So there's plenty of them going around. They're kind of budget, and so I'm thinking Sphinx of Foresight is probably the right card. Now Narset is in other Fires based decks. It's also in the Planeswalker 4-color Planeswalker deck, and all those are running Teferi, but I don't know. Teferi, I think, is a little bit more of a liability with how much it already costs. I typically like to find these undervalued cards. Sphinxes are already starting to go up slowly. Still can be had for a quarter. This is how much faith you have in Standard before it rotates. We still do have a decent amount of time, and I would definitely choose something. Fires is sticking around. I definitely choose something else with Conqueror's Death. If you are worried that rotation is going to occur before the pandemic is over, and no one really invests in standard cards, then I would look at non-rotating cards. But if you do believe that we will have like a robust summer when people get back in the swing of things and want to, go out and actually do things and play Magic and go to GPs, I don't know. That's really the $1 million question at this point. But this one is, take that whole aspect out of it, this one is the card that does appear to be the best position for like a double up or a triple up or those buy lists that then, actually make sense. Flipping a Card Kingdom, they're paying a quarter for it right now. When all said is done, maybe they'll actually buy it back for $1. So I don't know how much actual inventory they have of this particular card. But yeah, it's very, very interesting right now with, that's really the $1 million question with, one thing I have noticed, a little bit of a side note, is I have seen an uptick, and maybe you'll let me know too, with if those of you do like sell on eBay and TCG Player, I've noticed an uptick of people actually buying things. And I think it really has to do with the stimulus check hitting people that have income that is disposable. It's kind of funny that the demographic for Magic players, there doesn't seem to be as many as you would think that are actually out of work. There seems to be, our demographic is more of that are working in those essential businesses that are still open. Of course, there are people that work in restaurants that are closed and stuff like that. But man, I've just noticed a lot of people getting that $1,200 stimulus check, and they're just blowing it on, because they do have a job. They're still getting paid. And so they just have an extra, money to then throw on Magic cards. And I've seen an uptick on stuff. So yeah, we could see some of that stuff. I'd more go towards non-rotating cards like Commander than rotating cards like Sphinx, but it still is an interesting question. Elspeth Conqueror's Death, if you don't have faith in it, it's another card that I think runs in most of these Fires that survives rotation. And I think there will be some iteration of Fires. I think that Cavalier is really, really strong, but Kenrith is also incredibly strong with Fires of Invention. And this sucker's staying. And there's always going to be cards that are break Fires of Invention. All right, so let's go on to the last card, which is Lurrus the Dream Den. I'm thinking this card is going to get banned, but in the short term, I think there is a card again. It depends if you do believe in rotation or not. Is Priest of the Forgotten Gods. Priest of the Forgotten Gods is going in most of these Lutrous decks. It's the lowest it's been in a long time. It is actually more expensive on Card Kingdom, so that's a good sign compared to the Sphinx. And it's the #1 deck currently. And most of the Lurrus decks are going this route. There are a few that are going a few different routes than Priest of the Forgotten Gods. But this is it's just a broken little combination with Lurrus. You have one of the problems with Priest is you can sometimes run out of just gas for the card. But this synergizes so well with Lurrus because not only does it Lurrus allow you to have something in their graveyard after you sack it to then recast, but you get the mana right then and there to recast one of those cards back from your graveyard. So I think it's just a matter of time when people actually realize that the really good combo with Lurrus right now in Priest of the Forgotten Gods is the zombie out of War of the Spark that puts in the token. So it's one of those things you can cast every turn with Priest, sack. There might be better targets at the moment, but I think that the Priest is going in enough decks that's going to justify a double up of this card. So there's kind of my long overview, part 2 of cards that I think are pretty interesting. Again, the $100 or $1 million question here is how much faith do you have in the paper market? And I don't know. I could see it going either way, and I wouldn't blame you for going either way. It's definitely the more risky to invest in paper at the moment. I know there's a lot of people that are investing into long-term stuff, but I think that's almost as unstable as short-term because of just Wizards. I mean, they're not reluctant to reprint things anymore. They're just reprint, especially when layers are concerned. And so things that used to be where we could have these kind of calendar things, like we know that Commander's being reprinted in August. We know that there is usually a specialty set or a master set in November or something like that. You know, usually we have these cyclical patterns that happen, but now these secret layers and these other products are just really throwing us for a loop. And I don't know. It's very weird in the time of speculation for Magic the Gathering, but there always will be those ebbs and flows in markets. There always will be that little niche, if you can find it, that you will be able to make those double ups. It's not going away. I know it's cliche to say, you know what Rudy says, but stay the course. Usually that pays off more for the people what is the expression that it goes to the bold? The people that are willing to take those risks are the people that are going to make out the most. So again, don't invest in stuff you can't afford here. Don't just go blow out your stimulus package if you can't. And there's still a lot of uncertainties with the global market. We've seen some really crazy stuff lately with oil prices and other crashings of markets. I mean, our main street here in my local town is just shutting down and businesses are being closed for good. And that's going to have a domino effect. And I think that we're really starting to feel the effects in September and August when, you know, people realize that shutting down the economy for this long does have repercussions. But I can also see it going the other opposite direction with having some of the most unprecedented growth in Magic the Gathering as far as card prices are concerned. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. I'm looking forward to your comments in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.